Progressive Era. Written and created by Molly Sheen and Courtney Usher. The Progressive Era started around the early 1890s and continued until about the mid to late 1920s. During this time, America was pulling in millions and millions of immigrants from foreign countries, and this is really what sparked the idea of the Progressive Era in many ideologists' minds. Originally, the Progressive Era was more of a social movement, but then quickly turned to a political one, aiming to eliminate corruption in the government. The progressives of this time period rejected social Darwinism. In other words, people who believe that the problems we face, poverty, greed, racism, class warfare, etc., could all be addressed by providing a steady education, a safe environment, and an efficient workplace. The Progressive Era is a very overlooked time in our country's history. However, in a way, it can relate back to the human body. There are many different parts of our body that contribute to our health, just as many different things contributed to the success of the Progressive Era. For example, let's take the respiratory system. The respiratory system consists of the lungs, the diaphragm, and the larynx. Starting off with the lungs, its main job is to just help us breathe in general. The 18th and 19th Amendments, which were both ratified during the Progressive Era, can be correlated with our two lungs. The 18th Amendment, which prohibited the trading, selling, or buying of alcohol, freed up America in a way, letting us breathe. When this amendment was ratified, drunk arrests, hospitalization for alcoholism, and liver-related medical problems all drastically decreased, relaxing and letting our country breathe in a way, just as our lungs help us breathe. The 19th Amendment gave women the right to vote and have a say in our government. Before this, it was almost as women didn't even have a voice. When the 19th Amendment was passed, women could vote and stand up for themselves, and they weren't seen as nothing. The 19th Amendment let women breathe, and they could speak their minds, which greatly benefited our government. On to the diaphragm. Its main function is to expand and support the lungs. In this case, anyone who supported the ratifications of the 18th and 19th Amendments, so the Senate and mostly all women of America during this time, can be seen as the diaphragm. To wrap up the respiratory system, the larynx. The larynx is basically the voice box of our body, and it manipulates our sound, our volume, and our pitch. Susan B. Anthony represents the larynx perfectly because she was one of the leaders of the women's civil rights movements. She once said, "No man is good enough to govern any woman without her consent." Susan defended and spoke out for all women in America, giving women of the Progressive Era their voice, just as the larynx gives us ours. Now on to the nervous system. The nervous system consists of the brain, all of our nerves, and our spinal cord, also known as our back. Starting with the spine, the support system for our entire body, Theodore Roosevelt is a perfect representation of the spine during the Progressive Era. He was the President of the United States for 7 long years, from 1901 to 1908, and is known as one of the best presidents of all time, too. He contributed to many laws and reforms that later led to further movements throughout the Progressive Era. For example, let's take the Sherman Antitrust Act. This was put in place to decrease prices of trade. Roosevelt's use of this act helped over 40 antitrust lawsuits and established many other laws that earned him the title of the Trust Buster. Roosevelt is seen just like the spine of our human body because he's leader of America for 8 long years, and his ideas tended to be the core ideas of the Progressive Era. Moving on to the nerves, the reflexes and muscle movements of our entire body. Elizabeth Cochran Seaman, also known as Nellie Bly for her pen name, is a perfect match. She's a strong woman and would do anything for her work. One time, she even faked insanity. Nellie Bly completed all of her work and tasks without hesitation, which is why she can be correlated with the nerves. Nellie's ideas led to greater ideas in the future. To wrap up the nervous system, the brain, the control center for our entire body. Woodrow Wilson, a leader of the Progressive Era, can easily be seen as the brains of this time period. Wilson was the 28th president and focused on his own ideas, new freedom, which he thought could be accomplished by getting rid of monopolies. With all of his ideas, Wilson controlled the Progressive Era, just as the brain controls our bodies, and without him, this time period would have not been as successful. Now on from the nervous system to the circulatory system. The circulatory system consists of the heart, the blood vessels, and blood cells. Starting with the blood vessels, which allow oxygen to move into the cells of our body, Wilbur and Orville Wright and the invention of the airplane can be seen as the blood vessels of the Progressive Era. An airplane's main purpose is transportation, a luxury to those who have enough money to fly. Just as all airplanes carry people to destinations, blood vessels carry blood cells from one part of the body to another, which is why we can see all people who have the luxury of flying as blood cells. Blood cells are a necessity to survival just as people are. Without the invention of the airplane, our life today would drastically change. On to the heart, the organ that gives us all existence. The laws, reforms, involving voting, and petition rights all can be seen as the heart. The heart's main job is to pump blood through our body, essentially keeping us alive. During the Progressive Era, America needed a change. America was dying, in a sense. With the same laws and the same amendments, and with unhappy protesters, many new laws were put into place, which in a way saved America. Lastly, the digestive system. This includes our stomach and our intestines. Starting with the intestines, the digestion and absorption of our food can be related back to the assembly lines. The assembly line was invented first by Henry Ford in about 1913. This was originally purposed to help the mass production of his automobiles. With these lines, a car was able to be fully built in less than 2.5 hours, rather than in over 12. This increased the productivity factors and brought in a lot of money to companies. Intestines process and digest our food and take out nutrients to help our body function. Assembly lines help process and make products, allowing the businesses to function well, which is why they can be correlated together. Last but not least, the stomach, one of the most important parts of our body. Its main job is to help digest our food. The intestines and stomach must work together, just as the assembly lines in supermarket did. The supermarket was invented by Clarence Saunders in about 1916. It was purposed to self-serve customers, allowing them to shop in grocery for what was ever needed. The stomach functions in the same way a supermarket would. The stomach takes food and breaks it down and swallows it, and then the supermarket provides food for customers to buy, take down, and mix for themselves. The tiny supermarket idea was sparked in Clarence Saunders' head in 1916, has become a world way of grocery shopping. The Progressive Era may not have been the most known time in America's history, but it sure was a successful one.